Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. This is the time for In Focus. In Focus, we have a very special guest in the studio. But before I do that, let me also remind you that this program is brought to you by Kind Courtesy Prudential Life Ghana, and with all your or whatever needs you have when it comes to your life policy, look nowhere else apart from Prudential Life Ghana. But let me go straight to today's topic. Or should I do an intro before I go into the topic? I think I'll do the intro first. Mr. Richard Adjetey is my guest. Thank you. You're a specialist in a very special area. And I'll tell the audience what it is. It's actually social protection. And when we talk about social protection, you know what it means. It sounds very, very, very simple, but it's a very technical and a specialized area. In our area of social welfare, we should have social protection. The state should protect you and I. They should make sure we have shelter, we have accommodation, shelter, food, security. Those are social protection. And there are some interventions. It's lately that we're looking at political interventions and we call them social protection. You've heard of school feeding, you've heard of others. What it actually means, I'll leave the expert to tell me, because I know, and I'm going to ask questions on your behalf regarding what politicians do. They read the atmosphere and see what is necessary. So for instance, there's free SHS. Meanwhile, the basic is not virtually free, and then the tertiary is not. What is the Constitution saying? We talk about school feeding. Does it cut across? Who are responsible, the caterers and all that? So many things and many questions are running through my mind. And those of you who have sent it to me because you found it on social media, we will definitely ask those questions. So let me come back to Richard and let me talk to him. Once again, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Social protection. If we say social protection, from your point or from your expertise, what does that mean?
Social protection basically means, broadly, you can define social protections as it's a set of policies and programs that are being carried out by the states or other parties to help reduce poverty and vulnerability, to ensure minimum standard of living and dignity as well as well-being for these vulnerable groups that we have, basically. Some also refer to as a set of services and transfers. And so with regard to the definition of social protection, it's quite broad. But basically when you refer back to our National Social Protection Policy, we try to define social protection as a range of actions that is being carried out by the states and other parties. Non-governmental organization. Yes, in response to poverty and vulnerability, with the aim to make sure that those that are not covered or those that are poor have a dignity lifestyle. So that's basically what social protection is all about.
Wow. And
but there's a clear distinction between social protection and social interventions.
Are we not mixing the two here? But we'll get to that.
You'll get to
put that at the back of the mind, because there's social intervention and social protection.
Yes, basically.
Right. And so I think that would go for a while. But let me come back to you. Are we doing what the definition is as a nation? Because we talk about the definition you just gave me as a nation. Are we doing it?
To some extent.
Do we have something documented to say that this is how we're going to go as a nation?
Yes, to some extent to some extent, because if you look at Ghana, for instance, let me come back to something. Ghana is a signatory to both international charters and other policy documents. And so we are obliged to have integrated social protection systems in the country. Okay. Again, when you look at the country as a whole, Ghana is undergoing transformation in various fronts. Like, you are having a transition to the middle income status. You are having urbanization, which is becoming more challenging. You are having communication, information advancements, and other things. And these transformations or these changes cut across families, household, and structural and social, cultural structures.
Okay.
And so it has implication on our implementation of social protection. So basically, Ghana is doing something in regard to social protection, basically. But there is a but.
And what is the but?
The but is, are the poor really benefiting from these interventions?
That was the question I was going to ask you. So once you've taken it up there with a but, I'll let you flow. Like I said from the beginning, this is a very specialized area.
Yeah.
So my questions will come in the conversation as we go.
No problem.
So give me some of the buts that you actually come.
Yes, when we talk of a social...
And I don't want you to hold back.
No, I don't hold back. When we talk about social protection interventions, within the integrative social protection system, there are certain elements that reduce vulnerability and poverty. Okay. And these are what we call the labor market interventions, the social assistance, the social insurance, the community-based productive schemes, and then the child protection. Okay. These are elements that help to reduce vulnerability and poverty. Again, within this integrated social protection system, there are categorical members which are very essential that need these elements. Okay. And they are the extreme poor persons, the vulnerable and excluded. When we talk of extreme poor persons,
I was going to ask you, so let me ask and then you take it up from there.
Okay.
Who would define an individual as an extremely poor person?
Extremely poor person are persons who are not able to meet their basic human needs vis-a-vis their nutritional requirements. And if you look at our report from the GLS 6, Ghana Living Standard Survey 6, it clearly indicates that we have about 8.4% of the total population that fall within that category.
So we are aware of it?
Yes. And currently, as I speak, the extreme poor population have increased to 10%. So it's quite worrisome.
10%?
Yes, 10%.
Extreme
poor population. It's quite 10%. And then when we talk of vulnerable, vulnerable are people who face all form of abuse, deprivation, and they have a livelihood risks, like women, children, disabled persons. And then when we talk of the excluded are people who have been marginalized in the society. They are not being asked to take part of decision making. Those are the marginalized group.
Who are some of those people?
They are the destitute, the mental challenged person. People, we classify them as witchcrafts, and those they fall within that. So within the integrated social protection system, these are the category members that need to be protected by the states. That is why when we terrorized social protection, we said it's the state citizen contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And all of these things were supposed to come under a particular ministry, right?
Yes.
But it looks as if lately we have different departments taking care of this. This should go under the Department of Social Welfare. Right?
No.
Okay.
Let me correct you here.
Okay.
In 2013, there was a rationalization study that called the need to prioritize the various social protection interventions we have in the country.
Okay.
And after that prioritization study, the ministry was restructured by the Executive Instrument 1 in 2013. That make Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection.
Okay.
Now, the ministry have the mandate. They have the strategic oversight mandate, as well as monitoring and development of other proper interventions. Okay. And so the ministry is supposed to work in contention with other ministries.
Right.
Social protection intervention cut across various ministries.
Okay.
Each ministry have intervention. But the Ministry of Gender Social Protection is supposed to coordinate. And that is why in 2015-2016 we developed the social protection policy.
Right.
So the idea of the policy is to have coherent and effective and consistent social protection system in the country. Yeah.
Interesting. And I'm looking at a ministry where gender, children and social protection, so that it means that the bat would actually fall on them.
Yes.
It looks as if where the question is going to come from now is that are we not actually mixing the two, where we're talking about social intervention and social protection?
Yes, and when we talk of so let me clear it now. When we talk of social interventions within the integrated social protection system, we see it as those initiatives that are taken up by governments, NGOs, and other parties, mainly to help provide income and commodities to the vulnerable groups.
Okay.
To secure their social status and rights, and then to make sure that you protect them against livelihood risks. That is mainly about social protection interventions. But then there's a debate. If you take studies like Harvey and Co. 2007, they were arguing that as to what to categorize as a social intervention is quite dynamic, because there is overlap between social protection and number of livelihoods, human capital, as well as food security. Because of that overlap, it is very difficult.
This is from Harvey and Co.
Harvey and Co. 2007. And so it is very difficult for you to categorize what's really stand as social protection intervention. So that's the issue. So that is why when you look at our country as a whole, we have various ministries that are specialized in areas of their interventions. For instance, if you take Ministry of Health, they have the supplementary feeding program under them as a social intervention. They have the free maternal health program on the National Health Insurance Scheme. They have the exempt category on the National Health Insurance Scheme. They have the ART therapy. They have so many interventions on the health. When it comes to education, they have the capitation grants. They have the free senior high school program. They have the free uniform, free exercise books. When it comes to Ministry of Gender,
free sanitary pads.
Yes, when it comes to Ministry of Gender, they have the livelihood empowerment against poverty and the Ghana school feeding program. When it comes to Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, they have the labor intensive public works. When it comes to Ministry of Energy, they have quite a number of interventions. We don't tell them, I personally don't tell them as intervention. I see them as social supports, like the National Education Scheme and self-help projects. And then we have the solar program, where they improve cook stove programs. Those are social because basically the poor don't really benefit from those interventions.
It was a question I was going to ask for. With all that we've talked about, on paper and sound, the way it sounds, as if it's good. But is that what is happening on the ground?
Yes, when you take, for example...
Hold on a second before you answer this question, whether it's happening on the ground. Where are your kind? Because from what you're telling me, I'm sitting back, and one of the most... I'm enjoying this interview as if I'm sitting back and I'm listening to somebody talk to me or educating me like a lecturer. Where are your kind? And why are you not on the forefront when it comes to this area? Because I'm sure you've specialized in this area, and that's why you're flowing.
Yes, I could say I was once the director for social protection, but for other reason, I've stepped back and I'm not quite being involved in social protection now. The reason being known to the politicians, I can explain that.
I'll come to that later on, but that's what I wanted to know. It means that there's something called politics. Because I was going to ask that, I check people's background who are handling this area, and I ask myself, it's just as the tourism ministry also, where you compare the two and you think that there's too many square pegs being put in there. And I'm looking at the social, protection, and why you're not on the forefront. But back to the same question that I asked earlier, that on paper it sounds good, it seems everything is good, but is that what is on the ground?
Yes, it's not. For instance, when you take livelihood empowerment against poverty, the clear objective of that intervention was to smoothen consumption among the vulnerable groups. And then to link them to complementarities that other proper interventions.
Can you break it down a little more?
When I talk of complementarity, it means that when a household is being given a cash grant and you want to build the capacity of that household, there's a need for you to link the household to other interventions like a National Health Insurance Scheme, like planting for food and jobs, so as to be able to empower the households. So that's what we mean by complementarities. Now, when you take LEAP, for instance, we started the LEAP in 2000 and the implementation in 2008 with 21 districts with 1,654 households.
Beneficial.
That is 2008. Currently, LEAP is covering about 350,000 households in almost all districts. But there's a big question about the LEAP implementation. Within the design of the program, we have what we call graduation and exit model. And up to date, as I speak, 11 years in implementation, there's nothing like graduation or exit model.
Everybody is still
the number keeps increasing. And the number keeps on increasing. And these are some of the things, and this is my specialized area, the complementarity. This is what some of us are talking about. That 11 years ago, you may enroll a household member who might be 17 years. the person might be grouped or might fall within the poverty category grouped. The person today must be improving his living. Who the person must exist in the program, but the person is still on the program. So these are some of the challenges.
Monitoring evaluation to know exactly what is happening to the person. What are you adding? What value are you adding to the individual? Or it's just that because the person is gotten on, they are on for life.
See, when you pick a program like LEAP, the politicians are quite having a motto on it. It's a social protection intervention. It's a social assistance program, which must have a technical handle. But sometimes even in the selection of the beneficiaries, we've used a mixed method approach to select its beneficiaries, but you still find politicians having influence on the selection of beneficiaries, and that's quite also another big challenge. So many a times you will find that this person is not supposed to be on the program. Yes, they have a very robust MIS system that manage to select the beneficiaries, but sometimes some communities are being selected or some districts are being selected, and you ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
For instance, when you
never get answers.
Yeah, for instance, if you look at our poverty profile in Ghana, by the poverty map by GLSS 2015, we have some districts like Adaklu. Adaklu in the Volta region have a poverty incidence about 89.7%.
Right.
Very high at the national level. When you take from like Y West, Y East, they're having 90% and 84% respectively. When you take from like Shaidoku is having 55.1% poverty incidence. When you take Setre, Afran Plains, it's having about 56.6% poverty. And the rest of all, West Gonja in the northern part of Ghana, they have the poorest number of the poorest people. Ask yourself, how many of these districts that I've mentioned, how many of the poorest are covered in these programs? I conduct a study in Shaidoku, in my tutorial area. I'm conducting the research in that area. And Shaidoku, as I speak, they have about 1,350 households on the program. Meanwhile, if you look at the statistics, it's one of it's a district that is the highest poverty in Greater Accra, 55.1%. So that tells you that the poor basically are not much covered. If you come to the area of National Health Insurance Scheme, National Health Insurance Scheme primarily was to promote equitable access to and provide a financial coverage to basic health services among the vulnerable groups. If you look at the reports of the Health Partner Summit report 2016, it indicates that from 2014 to 2015, the National Health Insurance Scheme total population that it covers is 40% and 42%. But the indigents in 2014, it covered only 14.5% of the indigents.
In 2014?
In 2014. And in 2015, it covered only 12.5%, decreasing.
It went down.
Now, if you look at the studies by Kunto and Van Digis in their study 2016, they were saying that when it comes to the enrollment of National Health Insurance Scheme, the poor are less covered in their ranking. They said that the poor, only 17.6% are covered. And they reach 44.4%. Look at the difference.
Before I ask you what attributes to this sort of disparities, let me ask you, with interventions, is it for a period and then one would exit because you want to improve the person's livelihood? Or is it that once you get on, you're there for life?
It's a social protection primarily have a long-term significant effects. And you have the transitional impacts on both the household and the country as large. And so, if you really want to have an impact of social protection, then you must look at the people that you targeted. And then you must look at your design effects. Why am I saying that? If you have a proper design of the intervention, in the long run, you will be able to have an healthy population, a dedicated population. You'll be able to create a cushion that will sustain socio-economic shocks. You'll be able to reduce poverty within these vulnerability households. Now, the issue is that not all the interventions supposed to have a graduation and exit model. It's merely go back to the cash transfer programs. But in the case of the Ghana School Feeding Program, for instance, it's a long-term. If you look at the National Health Insurance Scheme, the same thing. Supplementary feeding, malaria control.
But even with the school feeding, once the person graduates from the school, they've exited.
They exited,
okay.
yes.
But I know where you're going.
But it's mainly if you take the Ghana school feeding program, the clear objective is clear there. The idea was to reduce hunger and malnutrition among these school people.
If even they're doing that, that's a different question altogether.
And then secondly was for them to be able to increase school enrollments, attendance and retention.
That's right.
And then to boost local productivity. But the question is,
are we doing? Yeah, because looking at it, that if you're still buying imported goods and the people who are even taking care of the catering itself are not actually cooking from hygienic conditions and all that, I have my own reservation on that. And so whether it's actually meeting the purpose or it's just that we've created an avenue, and like we all know, politicians will do things that will please them, so they end up coming into office. And we hear this, once one government exits, the new one comes in, everybody on that what you call cooking program should exit because they presume to be political affiliated to the other one, and it happens. And so it's something that I don't want to go there. This is not it's an open secret. Everybody knows about this.
Yes, but
whether they are qualified to cook. Because one time I did my own personal investigation where a party member who was actually a block maker, Sankre block, was now heading a particular district of cooking. And I was asking myself, where did this happen?
Yes, so that's the big question. And what worries some of us is that when you look at the chapter 5 of our constitution about the directive state principle of the state's policy, especially if you look at the article 24, 25, 27, 36, 37. 24, for instance, talk about the social rights. The 25 talk about education rights. And the 27 talk about the women rights. The 36, 37 is looking at the livelihoods. If you look at the public assistance, it's looking at the maximum welfare, as well as the protection and promotion of rights of these vulnerable groups. And so when you look at social protection system, it has been guided by the Constitution, the Fourth Republic Constitution. And so it's a right. And so when you find things going that the poor are not being protected, it's quite worrisome. It's quite worrisome. The interventions are doing very well. For instance, if you take something like the free HS policy, for instance, has been rightly reported by our Vice President, that it has covered about 30, it has increased enrollments of secondary education by 36%, covering about 181,000 school persons. The question is that, yes, indeed, but are the poor really covered in that program? The same package, it was being clearly stated that 30% have been reserved for those from the deprived communities. When you go to Adako, which have the highest number of poverty
like
incidents,
you said, from the poverty
incident, if you take like a front place, those children in those deprived communities who cannot even pass their basic examination, the poorest households members, are they covered by that program? That's the big question. So
they get others to go and cover that same
and so space. You find most of this intervention being benefited or being benefited by the rich and the average poor person, but not the extreme poor persons or the marginalized persons.
This question that I've asked over and over doesn't seem to have an answer. The intervention of the school, the free education for the high school, and the number of people who are entering, like you're saying, using Adaklu as an example, they can't even pass the basic exam, and yet they've reserved a certain number for them to enter. Then again, if it was an intervention to get people to go, and we always complain, because the quality also becomes a question, and everybody would sideline the quality and just think that we have to go to school. Going to school, fine. But my point here is that, could we have actually said, look, let's get it's an intervention though, but those who can afford, you check from person's background, you're working, so your social security would indicate that you're contributing to social security. So obviously they know the amount that you're even earning, so you can afford. So you're going to pay some amount so that whatever they had in reserve would take care of the very poor. It didn't seem to work. Is it because they just throw the thing about without consulting persons like you? Because I'm sure you'd have given them a different view or advice altogether.
Yes, sir, I agree with what you are saying, but you know, in social protection systems, especially with regard to our targeting approach, we have what we call the universal approach and targeted programs. when you look at the free senior high school program, it's a universal approach. The idea behind it by the government was to look at, to build the human capacity.
Okay.
And so it's not a targeted program. It's a universal that everybody can be benefit from the program. And so basically, you can't really fault out the number who qualify for the program, because government intention was that at least every child should be able to have at least secondary education. And so the government used a universal approach. But the question now, I think yesterday or something, I read something that they were saying that they are going to do the cutoff point at 25, aggregate 25. The question, once again, I ask myself, is that how would the extreme poor household member benefit from this? Because these are children in those households who don't have the various logistics and the resources to be able to have that aggregate 25 that they are requiring now, if it is true.
True, yeah.
But if it's not, and so basically it is quite a dynamic question. But
25, if it's what is we are hearing, the 25 cutoff,
yeah,
and then somebody say on their front planes,
yes,
and they don't have lights,
yes, that's the question.
And they're writing a comprehension with somebody who goes to Christ the King or Richard, and the question is my favorite television program, and they all have to compete for that percentage.
That is a question.
Obviously, and we all know that the private schools, it means that there's a question for those in the public schools.
Yeah.
Not even only in the farm place, but the cuts across. We all know the grace that they get.
And so that's really a big challenge now. But the concept and the idea is very fantastic. Because now, if you look at the number of children who are now being enrolled in the senior high schools, it's quite good. And so we find people, because literacy is one of the effects of extreme poor households. One of their major effects is literacy, and that's really affects their outcomes. And so when you are having a nation that is thinking about how to build the literacy level of its members, it's quite good program. But my worry is, do the poor really benefit from such interventions? That is my worry.
For the sake of time,
yeah,
I would have asked you solutions to this, because you have that, but that should be a different day altogether.
Okay.
And I don't want to go there, so I've asked those questions and found out the challenges.
Okay.
But I know you sit on that, the bank is there for you to give me solutions to that. I will definitely drag you into the studio sooner than you thought,
no problem,
so that we can do the solution. But in wrapping up for this one, because we have barely 3 minutes to go, and so
yes,
let's look at what we've looked at.
Yes, in wrapping up, what I want to say is that now currently, if you look at Ghana, our situation, the poverty rates, the reduction of poverty and vulnerability have become stagnant.
Wow.
And income inequality or inequality is in excess. And so what I'm pleading, or what I'm saying, that we should try to look at this intervention holistically. There should be a linkage among the various interventions. For instance, if we take livelihood empowerment and national health insurance scheme, the linkage fantastically have had a multiply effects.
Okay.
You are finding a household who have increased their healthcare use. You are finding a household who have improved their consumption. The same thing, the livelihood empowerment and poverty can be linked to the planting for food and job.
Okay.
Because when you look at the planting for food and job, according to statistics reported by His Excellency the Vice President, that program have improved the agriculture sector growth from 2.9 to 6.8%.
Okay.
It means that when we link that program to the LEAD program and identify the vulnerable household, there will be very much improvement in our standard of living. That's basically what I want to say.
Interesting. So there's more to talk about.
Yeah, there's more.
But time is not our friend.
I see that.
But I really appreciate your time here, insight into some of these areas that you've touched on. So at the back of your mind, when I call you, then you know that we're looking at the solutions and some of the areas that we left out.
Correct.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you there. This is where we draw the curtain on today's In Focus, and we're looking at social protection. Today we've looked at the challenges. Pretty soon, you never know, it might even be tomorrow, but depending on my schedule, then we would look at the solutions for our social protection. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.